Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and so happy to share with you that the Codist is back in print. We've had a hiatus because of problems with the publisher, but now all that's resolved. You can now get this top-rated, best-selling book, biblical thriller like none other, talking about the weaponization of DNA. You can get it in paperback and in Kindle. And don't forget the newly released book entitled The 7 Laws of Abundant Living, Lessons Learned from the Tree of Life, out there in both paperback and Kindle as well, all on Amazon or through our website, ignitinganation.com. We're here very excited today to talk with Dr. Marilyn Paul, author of An Oasis in Time, How a Day of Rest Can Save Your Life. Marilyn is the author of An Oasis in Time, How a Day of Rest Can Save Your Life by Rodale Publishing, just released, and the book called It's Hard to Make a Difference When You Can't Find Your Keys, named a Best Book of the Year by Spirituality and Health Magazine, and now in paperback. In Keys, she shares her pioneering model for making the journey from being disorganized and mismanaging time to a far more powerful life of being organized enough to go after your cherished dreams. In Oasis, Marilyn describes the path to a day off each week for what you love and often don't get to do. The rhythm of life leads to profound transformations in well-being and efficacy. With a PhD from Yale and an MBA from Cornell, Marilyn takes a unique approach that blends inner work and practical skills training. She's consulted to a wide range of companies and institutions around the world. In addition to her consulting work, she's taught on the faculties of the Yale University School of Public Health, the Hebrew University School of Public Health, and Colby College in Waterville, Maine. Her work has been featured on national media, including National Public Radio, the Chicago Tribune, USA Today, and CNN, and now making her debut appearance to the worldwide audience of the Igniting a Nation Broadcasting Network, as well as WorldNet Daily TV, WND-TV. We welcome Dr. Marilyn Paul to the program. Marilyn, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
Marilyn, we are the kind of program that says, we love the fact you wrote a book, I write books, everybody, excuse me, everybody talks to you write books, but we seldom ever get to know the author. We know the book, and we hear book pitches until they come out of your ears.
Right.
We're going to give you 6 to 10 minutes to tell us all about your book, and by the way, we're going to have 3 commercials in the middle of it, and you have to get it out as fast as you can and hope you make an impression. We're a 1-hour program, and it's all about you.
Thank you.
And what we want to know is your background. You have a PhD from Yale. This is not an insignificant accomplishment. You have an MBA from Cornell, not an insignificant accomplishment. What kind of home did you grow up in? What was your background? And who were some of the role models that drove you to want to make a difference about being a life changer? And I don't even think I would put you in the category of organizational development or personal motivation. I'm kind of searching for the placement of you because you touch on life changes through life changes. And that kind of seems like a redundancy,
Right.
but it really is your approach to changing life is to make changes.
Yes.
So,
And it's not just about change for me, it's about change drawing on ancient wisdom. So one of the things I feel so strongly about is we have a Western spiritual tradition. And in our tradition, they teach us to keep a Sabbath. Sabbath comes from the word Shabbat or lishbot, which means to stop. And stopping is hard for us. Stopping and turning our attention to what matters most, more than the to-do list, more than worldly accomplishments, more than anything, is to turn our attention to each other, to learning and reflecting on our inner journey, and to the great power that brings us on this planet. How can we work together? We need Sabbath time so we can reconnect.
So let me stop you. Let me stop you there. I'm an ordained
Sure.
rabbi. All right. I happen to also be an ordained Baptist minister, but I am Shomer Shabbat. Okay? There's only two people in the Bible, Jews and Gentiles. So regardless of whether or not you believe in Buddha or you believe in Rama or you believe in Raja or you believe, you're either a Jew or you're a Gentile, and I can't be anything but a Jew. 16 generations back, we're all Jewish. Every third generation is a rabbi. So,
Amazing.
so I'm still Shomer Shabbat, even though my faith system embraces a larger scope of first century Judaism than many of my peers. Okay? Okay. You grew up in a Jewish home.
Yes, I did.
Okay. Shabbat, Sabbath, was an island in time. You did things differently on the Sabbath than you did during the week.
Well, in my family, actually, we were a secular Jewish family.
Okay.
When they sent me to Hebrew school when I was 5, I came home and I really wanted to light candles for Shabbat, and it made my parents nervous, so they took me out of kindergarten and out of my Hebrew kindergarten, and I think that must have been one of the things that set me on this path, because I did not grow up with Shabbat.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, see, I have the complete opposite story. All right, as I started at 4, and I would walk to the end of my grandmother's. I spent every Shabbat with my grandparents. I would walk to the end of her driveway, and she'd watch me, and I would have to make the walk to Hebrew school myself. But my grandfather was waiting for me. It was only a block and a half away. He was waiting for me at shul for me to begin at age 4. Okay, you were age 5, but
Right.
you know, it depends on born before September 1st, born after, so the whole dating system. Okay,
Right.
I always wanted to be a rabbi. Okay, my father was Hungarian. Said, we've changed our name. Why would you want to bring persecution upon yourself?
Yes.
You just go tell people you're an American and keep your mouth shut. You're never going to be a rabbi. That's the end of that discussion. So now I'm even more fascinated because you were denied, you were deterred from adopting any observance of.
Right.
But did you go to synagogue on Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so you were part of the lost tribe of Israel.
Yes.
Called the Essenes. You know about the Essenes.
No.
Okay, one of the lost tribes of Israel. Now we know Judah and we know all the biblical names. There's one that happens to be a secret name. It's the lost tribe of Israel called the Essenes.
I don't know them.
Yes, they only want to be seen on Yom Kippur, and they only want to be seen on Rosh Hashanah.
So, well, so my parents had a house. They would not let me light candles in that house for Shabbat. I mean, it's an amazing story, but about 30 years later, my parents had moved out of that house. That house was up for sale, and my husband and I ended up buying it. And that next Shabbat, I lit candles in that house for our Sabbath, and I realized why we bought that house, because that little girl wanted to light candles for Shabbat so badly in that house that the whole cycle came back and I was able to do that.
Now we're talking to a Yale PhD.
Right.
Okay. This is a class of very, very, very narrow. How many people can have the credential of Yale PhD?
Sure.
All right? You know, most of the people I know have a PhD, but it's a plain high school diploma is what the PhD stands for.
Right.
Right? So
Right.
now you know I'm a rabbi because the comedian side, it can't help but come out. It's just the way we're built. It's in our DNA. You
Yeah.
you get the gene or you don't get the gene. But
Right.
uh, you've now seen the circle of life where you're called, you're wired, you're made to look at the Tanakh, at the Bible, at the Torah, and how God created the world in 6 days, and on the seventh day he rested, but he gave a specific description of the first 6 days. It was evening, then it was morning, and he did that for 6 days until he came to the Sabbath. And on the Sabbath, he did not distinguish it by saying evening and then morning, because it was to be, not defined. And I don't know if you speak Hebrew or if you're Hebrew fluent at all, but he called it Yom Echad. Okay, Yom Echad, one day. Okay,
Right.
when the word Echad is used, it's a compound one, not a singular one. So it would have to have evening and morning, two parts, to become one. We use the same Echad reference in the Shema, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one, but he's a compound, complex one. We talk about one bunch of grapes, one but made of many parts. One family, one but made of many parts. Shabbat, on the other hand, is not referred to as Yom Echad. Okay? It is an island in time. It is carved out from all time to be even revered as a separate, standalone entity, different in its presentation, different in its creation than all other days.
Right.
And you had this calling at 5 years old to light the Sabbath candles.
Yes, I did.
Now that you look back as this Yale PhD, what do you see as the overarching motivation for not fulfilling a childhood dream, but from a more esoteric, from a more philosophical, from a more spiritual fulfillment perspective? What did you see happening, and is that what led you to write this book?
Well, that's a wonderful question. And as I look back, because I have not thought of it that way before, my dad was a doctor and he taught at Harvard Medical School. I grew up in the Boston area. And I grew up in an academic pressure cooker. I knew I was going to Ivy League schools. There was no doubt. The need for accomplishment was very high. And as I look back, now I think that spiritual aspect of connecting with self, soul, and God was missing from our lives. And so I knew it was missing. I couldn't have said why or how I knew. But when I got to Yale, I was very interested in the issue of creating healthy workplaces, participative management, creating workplaces where people can be humane to one another because people spend so much time at work. And the way I connect the two now is that I work with organizations where people are seeking to build rest into the workplace, but also build rest into the weekend. And rest meaning not just going onto Facebook and browsing, but rest meaning unplugging, checking your connection with nature, with your family, with the people around you, and stop creating, stop achieving. We're created in the image of God, B'Tselem Elohim. So we need to remember that God, all powerful, stopped creating after 6 days of creation. Did God need to rest? No. God doesn't need a rest, but God knows we do. At least this is how I think about it. And God helps us understand and shows us what to do every week. If we miss that, we are missing a lot. It was very hard for me to learn to keep Shabbat. I am a driven human being. And it's the reason why I say how a day of rest can save your life is that I have a 13-year-old, I have a family, I have a community, and I know for sure every week I have time for them.
When we look at the Ten Commandments, there's something very, very unique that the world misses because we're taught the Ten Commandments as 2 stone tablets.
Right.
But when you line them up linearly, you find that the 4th commandment, which is remember the Sabbath, and honor and remember the Sabbath and keep it holy, that it is actually split in 2. The first half of Shabbat has to do with the first 3 commandments. The second half of Shabbat has to do with the remaining commandments.
Beautiful.
When we look at the horizontal and the vertical, we cannot have a vertical relationship with God unless we seek rest in Him. And therefore, we cannot have one true God. We cannot avoid the idolatry and the imagery and the falseness of the world unless we're lined up with God. Then we have that thing called people. And the second half of Shabbat is, now that I've entered into a period of rest, I can now make room for God, but I can also tolerate my fellow man. I can honor my parents.
Yes.
I can live a life of not having avarice and envy. I can find a way, just in the 10 Commandments, if I use Shabbat as the hinge for my vertical and my horizontal relationship, I use the Sabbath as a way of and I've called Havdalah, I've redefined as re-entry. That God separated the holy from the profane. Okay? The Sabbath was created to separate the holy from the profane. We were to enter into a period of time, an island of time, that was to replicate holiness, meaning presence with God. When we end the Sabbath, we re-enter back into the profane, but we're now prepared, we're equipped. It's like training. It's like anything that we do, if we're not renourished, if we're not refreshed, if we're not renewed,
Right.
then we're not prepared to take on more tasks, more challenges, more problems. As a matter of fact, we become short-tempered, we become intolerant, we become abusive if we don't take out that moment in time. So this oasis, this island in time, this oasis in time, is that Sabbath rest.
Right.
And you knew that at 5 years old.
Right. And so, one of the things I found, so I do have a PhD in management from Yale, and I have an MBA. And one of the things I have found, which is very interesting, is that a number of business organizations have been interested in the book. And why are they interested in the book? They know that burning out management and employee is bad for business, and that in our world, our larger zeitgeist, we really believe in this idea of nonstop action, and it is not possible. So what I'm trying to do is say, hey, meditation is fantastic, mindfulness is fantastic, and do this practice, which, as you say, is a hinge between relating to our source and relating to the human world. And that's why it's placed, as you said, in the fourth place. And remember the Sabbath. It always strikes me, that's an interesting way of putting it. Are they back then forgetting the Sabbath? You know, we have forgotten.
Of course.
But were they forgetting? And the starting point is to remember and then observe. So what I try to show is this is important, this is valuable, this is our Western spiritual tradition, and it's immensely possible. People say to me, well, I need 8 days a week, don't take a day away of getting things done. And I often say to them, you know, if you work hard for 6 days and rest on the seventh, you've transformed your ability to take action, because just again, as you said, you're renewing, you're replenishing. And the Kiddush prayer, we say, Vayinafash, we get our soul back. And that is invaluable as a way to live. I myself couldn't live without it. I don't know how. I look at people who are on the run every day and I think, whoa, I can't do that. That's too hard.
You know, it's interesting. I work 6 days and 3 nights a week. All right? So people would say, you work 24/7. And I say, no, I work 24/6.
Right.
And they look at me and they always look at me odd. You know, you're always on the go, you work 24/7. No, I work 24/6.
Right.
Okay? I take no bookings on Friday nights or Saturdays.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm booked Monday night, Tuesday night, Thursday night, many Wednesday nights, many Sunday nights. I have a television program, 2 of them, Revealing the Bible and Revealing the Truth. Revealing the Bible is Hebrew and English, and it takes you from Genesis all the way through in Hebrew and English and explains the words, and it's amazing teaching because the greater Gentile world that believes in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob know absolutely nothing about him. If they want to learn everything about him, the first 5 chapters of Genesis, I can tell them all about. Not only can I tell them about their engrafting into the Commonwealth of Israel, but into the entire foundation of Christianity is found in the first 5 chapters of Genesis. Mm-hmm. And they're completely unaware, and they think I'm out of my mind. Well, there's millions of viewers that are now watching this program that are saying, he's not so meshuggah as we thought. He's making a lot of sense, because there's attributes of God revealed in creation that man doesn't have, and we think we're little gods because we have control. We got 2 houses, we got a bunch of cars, we do this, we do that. Well, you know, my kids do what I tell them. I'm a little god. You're far from a little god of any kind. You're not a capital E Elohim, nor are you the lowercase Elohim of all the other gods. We've come to a point where we need to take a break, but okay. I'm fascinated and I'm thrilled that you returned to what I will say was the call of God on your life at age 5, that you returned. I went to my father at age 13 to say I wanted to become a rabbi. He told me, we did not come to this country to be persecuted. No. I was ordained as a rabbi at age 55. Right?
Amazing.
I was not going to let my life end without that. 42 years later, I was ordained a rabbi. We're going to take a short break. We're talking with Marilyn Paul, Dr. Marilyn Paul, author of the book An Oasis in Time, How a Day of Rest Can Save Your Life. This is not only biblically correct, this is medically correct. This is organizational development correct. This is in every way, shape, and form true, as if it were written by the hand of God. Because the truth contained in here is, if you'll take time out, put yourself in time out, All right?
Yes.
You'll find yourself with a greater capacity to learn, to heal, to stay well, to reduce stress, anxiety, and get a good night's sleep. All that in one book. We'll be right back. Shalom. I'm the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, Executive Director of Igniting a Nation and host of the daily TV program Revealing the Truth, seen live every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Standard Time at www.ianbn.com, and then replayed throughout the day and night via our website. All of our segments can be seen on the Igniting a Nation YouTube channel. Since our launch in January of this year, we've expanded our global reach to over 54 countries with a social media following of over 125,000. Our commitment is to bring you the most in-depth interviews with authors, subject matter experts, and thought leaders from around the world. We have interviewed guests from Israel, Brazil, England, India, and all across North America. All of our authors are featured on the Books and Media page on our website, www.ianbn.com. There you can find a direct link to the book you want to order, and we receive a small commission directly from Amazon. There is no cost to you for this service. In addition to our daily teachings and interviews, we make available to you the archive of all of the interviews on our YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram channels. Our live program is available from our homepage, and there is never a charge to you for any of this access. We made the decision long ago that we would remain a commercial-free resource that would not be influenced by any pressure from any outside company. There are only two ways that we are able to continue to operate this ministry and provide you with the only live 4-hour daily Christian television talk show program. The first is through your support and tax-deductible contributions to Igniting a Nation. These can be made directly through the donate button on the website or sent through the mail to Igniting a Nation, 2700 Corporate Drive, Suite 120, Birmingham, Alabama, 35242. The other way we support the program is by offering you a unique opportunity to have access to over 10 years worth of teachings on a subscription basis. The teaching archives contains all of my prior sermons, Torah studies, prophecy in the news videos, and much more for the low subscription price of $5 per month. This subscription grants you unlimited access to over 800 hours of content not available elsewhere and is updated weekly with the most current prophecy classes. In addition to 20 hours of original TV programming each weekday, we invite you to join us live every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday evenings for our Prophecy in the News classes. The times and locations are listed on our events page on the website www.ianbn.com. Every day you and I are faced with the challenge of where we will go to hear the truth. We are committed to bring you the only program of its kind that covers the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. We cannot do this without your support. Since we launched on January 5th, 2017, we have aired over 300 individual teachings, interviews, and commentaries not available anywhere else. We are now working side by side with almost every major Christian publishing house to bring you the most in-depth feature interviews possible. Our 1-hour features address every subject that affects the believer's life. We are hearing of salvations from the Middle East, Africa, and all across the United States. Lives are being changed every day, and we have only just begun. Our mission is to become your trusted resource and grant you access to the people, tools, and information you need to grow in your relationship with the Lord. You can help us by liking us on social media and through your financial support. We know you have many choices in who you support, but we are prayerfully asking you to consider helping us keep revealing the truth, true to our calling, to cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth like no other program available. Donate today and help us bring the message to the four corners of the earth. Visit www.ianbn.com and donate, buy a book, or subscribe to our teaching archives. Without you, we do not exist. Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're talking with Dr. Marilyn Paul, author of An Oasis in Time, How a Day of Rest Can Save Your Life. Marilyn, welcome back to our program.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
Marilyn, I'm so impressed that you have introduced into corporate America what you and I and hundreds of generations, 4,000 years since the Sabbath was instituted by God. Maybe we don't know exactly. We're year 5778 by the Hillel calendar, based on the sixth day of creation. How long before Abraham? How long before Moses? 4,000 years is good enough. Okay?
All right.
All right. And you've introduced it to corporate America. All right. A bold move, to say the least, to say, corporate America, you need Shabbat. You need to run 24/6. This needs to be your model. You need to build it into your management. You need to train your people this way. And guess what? Chick-fil-A shuts down on Sunday and they make a fortune. Hobby Lobby shuts down on Sunday and they make a fortune. Okay? They found out that their people have family time. They don't have to worry about schedules and conflicts and holidays and issues because they have a day. And you're not necessarily promoting, and I want to be clear, that people become what we would call Shomer Shabbat, that you would be Sabbath observant, and that once you lit your Sabbath candles, you didn't light a fire in your home, you didn't turn off lights, you didn't do that, and you didn't hire somebody to do it for you. You're saying to corporate America, you know what? Lighten up, boys. Your hard line, produce. Your chickens are tired.
Yes.
And the production is not increasing because you're yelling louder. If you would give them a day of rest, your production will not only increase, but your quality will increase. And the general attitude of your organization, the entire organization will rise to a higher level when they find rest.
Right.
This is the core principle of your book.
And I do have to say, just philosophically,
Yes.
both are true. One, we can say you need Shabbat because it will improve your productivity.
Yes.
And that's more of the Aristotelian teaching. In the Jewish world, it's really taught you need Shabbat because it's a commandment.
Right.
And it's your soul that needs that renewal time. And I think both are true. We need just a day to be in awe.
Okay.
So we're not shopping on that day. We're not on our various devices on that day. We train ourselves. We learn from the moment we stop, whether it's Friday night, Saturday morning, Sunday, we have stopped ourselves from even thinking about what we're going to achieve. And we look at the beautiful faces around us, and we're in awe. We can see we have an opposable thumb. These are amazing people here, and it's very easy to get stressed out and forget that the people around us are truly amazing, and we don't treat them and ourselves with the love we and they deserve. So that day of rest, and I will tell you that often for me, I don't feel fully rested, even if I'm not doing anything or I'm hanging out with my family. I don't feel fully rested till like 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, which is why I have found this so valuable, because I also meditate most days, that this gives my whole body time to unwind. And unwinding takes time. It takes more than an hour-long tub. It takes more than a good shower. It takes time to unwind.
Even in Israel today, Sabbath observance is uniquely individualized. There are those that go to the beach. There's those that have a picnic. There's those that go to the synagogue. There's those that go to the wall. There's those that do any number of things, but
Right.
they do it on that day where they're not doing anything else. And the command for the description of Shabbat is to do no regular work.
Right.
Okay, that means that as a rabbi, when I was a congregational rabbi, I was technically in violation of Shabbat because I was doing my regular work on the Sabbath.
Right.
And so, listen, being who I was, I, on a trip to Israel, met with a number of heads of the yeshivas who sit on these various tribunals and said to them, tell me where in Torah I am given dispensation for working on the Sabbath. They quoted me Rashi, they quoted me Akiva, they quoted me the Rambam, they quoted me all the Talmudic scholars, but they couldn't quote me Torah. And so I said, I've got to hear it from the book, the Bible, as to how I'm not violating it. So we had to go back to see what the Levites did in the preparation of the Sabbath offering, and take a look at what activities were permitted. And it became quite a convoluted test because in reality, I was driving to the synagogue. I didn't live on the property. The lights were being turned on and turned off because the board said, why are we paying this exorbitant electric bill? We've got 10,000 lights on. We got to turn them off. We can't just let them burn all 24 hours. Well, then we couldn't be truly Sabbath observant. You're not promoting that in any way, shape, or form.
No.
You're not promoting any kind of legalism. You're not promoting anything. You're saying develop for yourself what your oasis in time looks like.
Yes. And one of the things, I have 5 sort of gateways that I recommend. It's hard to keep a Sabbath. It's hard to stop. I talk about the just one more thing syndrome. Like if you know you have to light candles at sunset, that's a time. So I think it's helpful to have specific times to aim for. Otherwise, you always want to do just one more thing. You want to just finish folding the laundry or send one more email or just write down one more note. So it's helpful to have a real stop time. And so one of the gateways I have is begin your Sabbath and end it. And it might not be the whole 24 hours. And when people are beginning, it's helpful to have an hour. You start it, you say, okay, I'm off the clock and off the hook for this hour. For a lot of people, that's when they get anxious because we manage our anxiety by taking action a lot of the time, doing something, anything. But another gateway is slow down. Slow down, slow your movement, slow your thinking, actually slow your speaking. Slow down, that's another gateway. Slow down to savor, like pay attention to your experience. Another gateway is let go of achieving. So just for that hour, you've begun it, you've ended it, you're slowing down, you let go of achieving, you unplug, just put your phone away and your devices, don't check social media, and there you are in this, for us, rather extraordinary moment when you look around and say, I'm here. And then, what am I here for? Is it just to check things off the list? Of course not. So that's when you have a chance to practice a little bit of this great practice, but not halachically, not according to Jewish law necessarily, but a taste of what the rabbis call on Shabbat a taste of the world to come, a taste of that magnificent feeling of being that all of us have access to when we do this practice. And then one other gateway that I have is plan, protect, and prepare. And that means look ahead, set it aside, make some plans for yourself, enjoyable, celebratory plans, and then let go. Let the Spirit of God operate in your life where you're not planning everything anymore. Just create a few plans and then let go.
I'm just 100% in agreement with you. I've lived a lifestyle this way, and most of the accomplishments that I have been able to obtain have been my ability to go above and beyond. It's because I've rested.
Yes.
I now take a daily nap because I have my morning show that's 4 hours, and then I have evenings where I travel to other various locations to speak, and I set aside a 2-hour period in the middle of the day where my phone is off, and it's just my dog and myself, and she even knows this isn't the time to play. Don't bring me a toy to play with. Bring a bone to keep you occupied, because I'm going to be in this position of rest. And I doze off and take a nap.
Lovely.
It has served me to the point where I have more free time and an incredibly full calendar. And people say, well, I know you're so busy. Well, I'm not so busy. Well, what do you want to do? Well, we want to have dinner on Wednesday night. Well, Wednesday's a good night for me. Sure, I'd be happy to come. You know, you find ways that by setting aside time for rest causes you to reevaluate on a new scale, a new paradigm of what really matters.
Right.
And it's the byproduct of rest. It's not something that you rest so that you can reprioritize. You rest because you need to rest. And one of the benefits of rest is you're able to assess. I know that when I would return from the weekend, if you would have brought me that problem at 4 o'clock on Friday, my reaction and response to that same problem at 4 o'clock on Friday was completely different when you brought me that same problem at 9 o'clock on Monday.
It's so true. It's so true. And I'm sure I imagine anyway, that there are parents of young children saying, oh, right, but I'm never off. And we have one son, and he was raised in this practice. So he knows what it is. He knows that Saturdays there's no screen, Friday night, no screen time, there's no phone. He goes out and plays with his friends, and he knows that we are available. We're not running off to check email. And our best family time from when he was a baby was this relaxed time, Saturday morning, being together. And so it's possible to raise your kids like this where they can value rest. I have a very hyperactive kid. And also people at work who are saying, well, my boss would never let me do this. And then I would say, well, then teach your organization why this is so important. There's so much data, and they can find it in my book. I did a lot of research for this book. And I will also say I just got contacted by the chaplain at a hospital because the doctors need this, the leadership in the hospital needs this. So it's corporate America, it's all kinds of nonprofits where people really need to understand the immense value, the medical value, as you said, and the spiritual value.
There are 65 million caregivers in America right now. Peter Rosenberger is an author. He is a caregiver, 35 years of taking care of his wife, Gracie. He has a radio show on iHeartRadio called Hope for the Caregivers. You too need to connect, because his entire approach is, look, you're on 24/7.
Right.
You only have so much capacity. If you don't take time to take care of the caregiver, then the person you're giving care to is going to suffer because you are not taking time. Your book fits perfectly into this message of taking care of the caregiver. That's an audience of 65 million, and every one of us is one phone call away. We're not talking about what my 91-and-a-half-year-old mother, who I'll say this to you, Kanai Nahora, is in great health and lives a full life, praise God, but there's many who take care of elderly parents. We're not talking about that. We're talking about that tragic 17-year-old who was in an accident or got hurt on the football field, or who had a fall or fell into a pool or whatever might have happened. We're all one phone call away from becoming caregivers. And if we don't have a way to refresh, to replenish, to renew, to refresh, then how effective can we be? And we're talking about an audience of 65 million. Right?
And part of it is knowing when you're exhausted before you get burned out. I was in contact with a clergyman in the Episcopal Church, and I think what happened is he's an amazing human who went and go and go and go, and then life stopped him. His own burnout stopped him. And so what I'm saying in this book is, you stop yourself in honor of this spiritual tradition. You stop yourself before life stops you. Because part of my own history is I got very ill, and I was in the middle of this arduous program at Yale, and I couldn't move. And we need to know when we're exhausted. I'm just putting up a blog post about that tomorrow. Know when you are exhausted and rest. Don't tell yourself a stupid thing like, I'll rest when I'm dead, because then you become the living dead. We have these phrases in our culture about, keeping busy and, busy hands make happy lives, but we still need rest.
Absolutely. There's no question. Let me refer you to the website, MarilynPaul.com. There you can find out about Marilyn, her upcoming events, her media. You can read about her books, both of them, and how to contact Marilyn to work with her, to get her involved in consulting, coaching, or doing workshops, keynotes, talks, working with business management. I come out of Hewlett-Packard executive offices and AT&T, 35 years as a corporate executive. And I can tell you that Pharaoh and I would have gotten along just fine. I was, less straw, more brick. I came out of the 70s, 80s, and 90s corporate world, and before I went into full-time ministry. But we do this. We have these tasks, we have these goals, we have these charts on the walls, we have these things that we must. And your message is not counter to it. As a matter of fact, it is the secret to success, is if you'll just take some time. You can refill the cup, but if all you're doing in a cup is you're opening the spigot and putting enough to cover the bottom of the cup, and you're drinking that, you're making 700 trips to get a glass of water. Okay, I'm going to tell you how to take one long drink that's going to sustain you for 6 days.
Right.
And you don't have to make 700 trips to the water fountain. And that, my friends, is what an oasis in time is all about. It's practical, it's real, and it uses the parallels of the biblical Sabbath, the seventh-day command, the fourth commandment in the Bible, for God to say to remember. You got to remind yourself, I need some time off. Okay? It's not the 2 weeks or the 4 weeks of vacation, because that takes you a week to download, to unwind, and then it takes you a week to recover from it. So I find vacations to be very counterproductive in my life. So what I do is I take groups to Israel, and I get to see Israel through their eyes, and that's kind of my vacation. I get to connect with my land, with my people, and that's how I use it for me to be able to do that. But An Oasis in Time, How a Day of Rest Can Save Your Life by Marilyn Paul. Every one of our audience who is struggling with feeling overworked, underappreciated, bombarded, frustrated, overloaded, works for the worst boss in the world. I've never heard of the greatest boss in the world. I was the worst boss in the world, and I worked for the worst boss in the world. That would have changed my attitude had I just had a little bit of rest. Marilyn Paul, thank you for being with us here on Revealing the Truth.
It's just great to talk with you. I'll say by the end, my forebears were also Hungarian.
Wow.
So from one Hungarian to another. Have a great week. It was wonderful to talk with you.
Thank you so much. God bless you. And that brings to an end our live broadcast day. But that does not mean that we go off the air. The United Nation Broadcasting Network is live and on the air 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Replays of every one of these episodes will continue all the way through tomorrow at 9 a.m. Central Time when we bring you the next edition of Revealing the Truth. In the meantime, you can watch us on Facebook Live, on Twitter, on YouTube, on Instagram, and then on tomorrow, WND TV, reaching their 600,000 plus audience. And so we want to encourage you to follow us on our website, ignitingnation.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and all of those social media sites, and join the Igniting a Nation family. Until we see you right back here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Central Time, right here in our studio in Birmingham, Alabama, we bid you shalom.